Hi, this is Angie Carpenter, supervisor of the town of Islip, the great town of Islip. In fact, we're sitting here at Long Island MacArthur Airport in the studios of Long Island News Radio. They are very gracious and allow us to use their studios every week. And very excited today on Supervisor Spotlight because the spotlight is shining on Mark Herbst, who is our guest today, and a very interesting dude. So we're going to hear a lot about Mark. Mark, thank you so much for coming down. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Supervisor. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. You bring a unique perspective to everything you do, I think. But let's talk a little bit about, you have served in the political arena. You were a member of the New York State Assembly. And, that's going to give you a little bit of a different read on what you do with LICA. But tell me how long you served in the Assembly and how you got to be an Assemblyman, what you did before, because that I don't know.
Okay. I served in the New York State Legislature for 5 terms beginning in 1994. Mm-hmm. The first Governor Cuomo was in office when I came in. And before that, there was I came in a special election. Fred Parola was the assemblyman who ran for county comptroller and stepped down. And it was also a redistricting year. So the boundaries for the state legislative districts had all changed. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was living in Hicksville, and the community of Hicksville all was, for first time ever, all put within one district.
Nice.
So,
that's nice. I love when communities are a whole in a district, an election district.
Yeah, so I was approached because I was active local civically. Mm-hmm. I was president of the library board and head of I was active with the Chamber of Commerce and the Community Council, which was an umbrella group. So I was very active in the community. So they approached me and asked me if I would go to, if I'd be interested in going to Albany. And I thought they were crazy at first, but I ran and I won with 75% of the vote. And so it was an interesting experience to be up in Albany and representing the district, which included pretty much everything from Jones Beach north to the northern state and Jericho. Mm-hmm. So it was a fascinating experience. I had never been in the political arena. My family was not very politically active, so I brought a different perspective. And it was a very rewarding experience, but it also grounded me to appreciate public policy and helping people.
That's great. And, I kind of parallel a little bit. I had not really been, my family was not active politically. I had owned a business, ran a business, and there was a vacancy on the Suffolk County Legislature. And I ran in a special election in 1993. So we kind of both got into government about the same time. But,
and my father was a printer, and you were in the printing business.
Yes. That's an interesting business now has changed dramatically from when I was involved. Back in the mid-'70s, actually, I started, or even earlier than that. But so I think the private sector involvement, having been involved in the community, the chamber, and everything, I think it served me well, and I'm sure it did you, in your role in government to be more grounded, to understand what it is to own a business, run a business, be involved in a business. When you're making decisions, voting on laws, legislation, policy, how it's going to trickle down and how it's really going to be implemented and how it really affects everyone in their everyday lives.
That's so true. And a lot of people in office, not to say there's anything wrong with, a lot of them are in the legal profession.
Yeah.
And that helps, obviously, dealing with laws and things. But it used to be a citizen government, originally government. That's how it started, the farmers, Mm-hmm. And I came with an engineering background. My passion was transportation, and it remains that today. So that was my background. So when I went to Albany, I served on the Transportation Committee as well as the Energy Committee. And at that time in Albany, we were going through the takeover of Lilco. And I served as the ranking member of the Energy Committee. So I brought a different perspective and a different understanding that I thought was beneficial. And it certainly helped, for me to deal with the issues at the time.
It's interesting that you mentioned the takeover of Lilco because, again, I was in the legislature at the time. And we were very, very much in the middle of it. There were 3 legislators that were involved in a lot of the negotiations and untold meetings at headquarters over in Uniondale, many, many meetings with Richard Kessel, on how it was going to be effectuated. And, it really permeated a lot of what went on at the legislature for a couple of years until we got through that.
Yeah. It's interesting times.
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. Yeah. So there you were in the Assembly. And now you are the executive director. Is that your title?
Yes, of the Long Island Contractors Association.
Long Island Contractors Association. So tell us a little bit about the organization.
Well, the Long Island Contractors Association represents the heavy construction industry on Long Island. We have about 170 different firms that do primarily public works, roads, bridges, tunnels, parks. So there's a lot of public policy issues that are involved with, and our main responsibility is to make sure that things are done safely and that there is a credible process that goes into public works and that it's fair bidding and the government is doing what's best for the taxpayers.
And again, having had that public policy experience in Albany has got to have been a tremendous boost in what you do every day, with LICA.
Well, I'm involved in a lot of the regulations, preparing the bids, dealing with public officials, advocate all levels of governments, from the federal government right down to the villages to find out what their capital programs are, what their spending is. Are they doing it effectively? Do they monitor the work that's going out in the field? Are the taxpayers getting the proper representation? Are they being looked after to make sure the money's being spent properly? And that's something that we are very involved with, enforcement and monitoring what takes place in the marketplace.
And that is really very important because when public policy is developed, when legislation is passed, and people are expected to follow it, it doesn't always hold true that that is what takes place. So you do need to have a monitoring. And conversely, when people are involved, they really want to do the right thing, but sometimes don't know what's involved.
That's true.
And I know from our perspective in the town of Islip, we have in place a very strict policy when it comes to, obviously, prevailing wage with all of our public works projects, but also we have an apprenticeship program in place, policy rather. And any project, any public works project over $250,000, that is the threshold, and it is a lot lower than some other municipalities are. They are required to prove that they have an apprenticeship program in place. And this is very important to those representing the workers to make sure that a safe environment is created, that we have that in place, and we in the town take it very, very seriously with our public works projects. And it's not always easy, and sometimes even the most experienced consultants that we deal with sometimes don't know and help in preparing bid documents. And if they aren't adhered to properly, we'll go back to the drawing board. And that hurts sometimes, but you've got to do things right. And as I started out by saying, we take it very, very seriously.
Well, I think the town of Islip does an excellent job. Your Commissioner of Public Works, Tom Owens, is one of the top professionals in the industry, and there's been a wonderful working relationship. So the residents are well protected in your town, and I'm proud to be a resident, and I know I'm getting the dollar's worth of what takes place. So everyone's doing a good job. So you should be proud of your workforce.
Well, thank you. I really, really am. In fact, today we had a health fair at Town Hall, courtesy of Northwell, just encouraging our workers to do preventive medicine. We did flu shots, blood pressure testing, and a number of other things. But we are very, very proud of our workforce, and the managers that are in place and the commissioners really, really do a fine job. There's a lot more that we're going to hear about from Mark in this segment of Supervisor Spotlight, so that we ask that you come back and join us for the next segment of our Spotlight. Hi, this is Angie Carpenter, Supervisor of the Town of Islip, and welcome back to Supervisor Spotlight. And in the studio with us today, we have Mark Herbst, the Executive Director of LICA, the Long Island Contractors Association. You know, before we took a break, we were talking a little bit about projects and the intricacies of the bidding process and adhering to all of the requirements. And Mark and his fine organization do a very good job of monitoring a lot of that and making sure that everything is done according to Hoyle. And that really is important because at the end of the day, it protects the workers on the job and it protects the taxpayers. And, you know, kind of that's what it's all about.
And, you know, people who are under the impression, you know, we're an advocacy group, special interest, you know, we want to spend money on construction. But we also take time to look at how money is being spent and some of the dollars that are being, you know, paid out. We live here. We're taxpayers. We don't want to pay too much. And as a resident of Islip, I'm very concerned what you do. And we've analyzed all the municipal governments to see how much debt they put towards the infrastructure. It's like when you buy a house, that's good debt, a mortgage. You spend money with a credit card, that's bad debt. So when a town investor or a local government is spending, if operating budgets, if they're paying extravagantly, that's not good. But to invest long-term in infrastructure with municipal bonds at a low rating, if you're doing it responsibly, that's a good thing. And Islip has a wonderful record of doing just that. We've just completed a wonderful study of what you've done.
Full disclosure here, I did not ask you to say that, but I really appreciate you saying that. And I want to jump in because you've touched on a lot of really important things. First of all, the idea of taking on debt. There is good debt and there's bad debt. And certainly we in the town of Islip enjoying a AAA bond rating that was just reaffirmed last week when we went out to sell some bonds. There was a robust bidding process that took place for Islip's bonds, and that speaks to our reputation, our AAA rating, the fact that it's a safe and secure investment. There were 8 bidders on a project, and we actually sold bonds for as low as 2%, 2.1%.
That's wonderful. That's a steal.
It's a steal. It's a steal. And that is important for people to understand. You can't possibly squirrel away enough money to gather up the funds to pay for a road paving project or, you know, a building that has to be constructed. Nor legally is it appropriate to do so, because then what are you doing? You're taxing people so that you can put money away for the future. You're taxing today's taxpayer. When you do a bonding project, and we never bond for longer than the useful life of the project because legally we're not allowed to, we'll get people come to the town board complaining that we're, you know, paying for something and it's going to be gone before you finish paying for it. Well, we can't do that. You know, projects are grouped according to their useful life, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years. And that's how the bonds are written. But something that's going to have a life of 30 years, is it right to pay for it? Should the taxpayers all pay for it in 1 year? Or should the people that are going to be using it for 30 years into the future, each year, they're all paying a little bit of this project that's going to last 30 years? So there's really, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons.
And, you know, and people always wonder, you know, are we spending the right amount? What investment are we making? We've completed an analysis of all the municipal governments on Long Island, their investments. The town of Islip, just look for the road spending. How much do you invest on roads per resident? I, as a taxpayer, what am I paying? It came out in Islip to be about $43 per resident that you pay for your roads. Now, in comparison, that's about $63 across Suffolk County. So you're much cheaper, and you're still in the lowest half of all the towns.
And we have 1,200 miles of roads.
Yes.
That's a lot of road to take care of. And for many years, I will have to tell you that the infrastructure in the town of Islip, the roads, the marinas, the docks, you know, buildings have been neglected. They really have. We've had roofs leaking and, you know, Band-Aids have been put on them. And it's not, no one wants to see a major expenditure happen, but, you know, sometimes it's the right and prudent thing to do.
And you've made those decisions, those tough decisions to look long term. It's not looking for the next election as many politicians do. You've looked long term and made the investment for the future generations.
Well, I think that's the beauty of what I bring to the table. Having lived a number of years already, this assignment, if you will, that I have now, this incredible opportunity that I have now to be the supervisor of the town of Islip, I am not looking, to use this as a stepping stone to go to any other office. I am feeling so blessed to have the opportunity, but there's so much to do, and I want to do it. And when anything confronts me or is before me, I am going to move forward in doing what I feel in my heart is the right thing to do, not based on, is this going to affect me getting elected again? And don't get me wrong, I plan on running for election in 2 years, but my decisions are not based on that, and they have to be based on what is the right thing to do. And I think we're doing that. We just recently, and it took a while for us to get there, approved a bond resolution to replace our animal shelter. Now, the animal shelter was built in 1964. To say that the conditions there are less than appropriate is being kind. But we worked together, and we were able to get it approved, and looking forward to that. It's going to be relocated in a place that's more centrally located, certainly more suitable, and the working conditions for our employees is going to be better, and certainly the conditions for the animals, the public that comes to adopt the animals, the viewing rooms. There were so many reasons for why we needed to do it, and we finally did move forward. And two, we're looking at bonding for the last portion of a dock and marina project at the Bayshore Marina. This is the last piece. We started about 12 years ago, and I'm hopeful going forward that we will have the support to get that done, because quite frankly, we have slips that aren't rented because they're not safe, and we have conditions that, are begging for an accident to happen. So, we need to address that.
You've made the proper investment, and I think it's wonderful, and I'm looking forward to more. And just, we sit here at the airport. The investments that are taking place here have been wonderful. And, you're attracting new airlines. Transportation is so important for Long Island. It's not just, getting around ourselves. It's the economic development for the entire region. And this can be a great place to help spur economic development to keep and sustain our economy.
Yeah, you've raised a very good point there, too, as far as the airport being an economic generator. And, for the first time in a very, very long time, we have all levels of government understanding what Long Island MacArthur Airport brings to the table, that it is a regional economic generator. The governor has recognized it in the funding that he's given us at the airport for the customs facility, for the interconnectivity study between the railroad and the airport, and certainly the county executive Ballone has given us some funding for some of the studies that we need to do. So all in all, we're getting that appreciation and understanding for how important it is for us, especially with the construction that's going on in at LaGuardia and JFK, that this is the alternate.
And it's so convenient to come here, fly in and out. You spend more time trying to find a parking spot in one of the city airports, going through security. Here you can just fly right through, literally. To get on a plane.
Yeah. And
it's convenient, it's comfortable, it's just a wonderful experience.
The customer experience at this airport, is always ranked at the top. That, I have to tell you. And we're thrilled that we have new service now with Frontier Airlines. There are 5 more cities that have come online nonstop out of Islip. And today, in the studio here, people walking back and forth, you can see there's a lot more activity. And that's all a good thing. It's a good thing for the residents in the town and for the businesses and residents of Long Island as a whole. So with that, we're going to take another break, and we will be back for our final segment of Supervisor Spotlight. Hi there, this is Angie Carpenter, Supervisor of the Town of Islip. Welcome back to this edition of Supervisor Spotlight. We are broadcasting from the studios of Long Island News Radio here at Long Island MacArthur Airport, and we were talking a little bit before the break about the airport and all the exciting things that are happening, and none the least of which happened because of the great team that we have in place here, our Airport Commissioner Shelley LaRose Arkin and her deputy and everyone that's on staff here. Have really stepped up the game, and it's starting to show with the new airline. I was just saying to Mark, they're now flying nonstop to New Orleans, Fort Myers, Miami. It's all very exciting, and starting in the spring, there are a number of other destinations that are going to be added, including Chicago, Detroit,
Great.
Minneapolis, Atlanta. So, and those are business hubs, for the most part. So I do think, to your point earlier about an economic generator, that's going to make a big difference. But I want to share something with you guys, and I asked Mark if it was okay to talk about what he does besides being a very effective executive director of the Long Island Contractors Association. So I'm going to ask you to share what you do on Sundays.
I happen to be a Lutheran pastor. I'm ordained in a Lutheran tradition, and I serve currently a congregation in Manhasset, Our Savior's Lutheran Church. And it was a long journey, and people joke because of my background in transportation. They said, that's certainly your highway to heaven. So I wear two hats. I have, so it's really been a wonderful experience, serving my faith, and it's been a struggle, and I'm happy to hear Minneapolis is now a destination, because I'm now pursuing doctoral studies in ministry at St. Paul, Minneapolis, in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, at Luther Seminary.
Great. Oh, that's great. Oh, only for you, Mark. Only for you. So I'm sure people ask all the time, having been involved in business, in the construction industry now, with LICA, and certainly in your career in the political arena, having been an elected official and assemblyman, how did you get to this point? What propelled you to get there? When did this all start?
Well, it certainly is a calling, and it's something that I avoided and tried to resist for a long time. But ultimately, the Holy Spirit wears you down, and but the role is to understand that everyone has a spiritual life, and I try to advocate that it's not just in your worshiping community, whether that be a church, synagogue, or a mosque, that your spirituality and your being, your existence is in your daily life. And how do you live out your daily life, and to care for one another, and how can you help people? And so I think I've been provided with a gift of having a very eclectic life, dealing with different things, where it gives me an opportunity to see things from different perspectives. To struggle with issues of family, to struggle with making sure there's food on the table. Can you make payroll? The business decisions. When people struggle with your daily lives, that's when they're hurt. That's when they're in pain. Someone grieving. They're not going just to a house of worship. They're living that throughout their lives. And I try to live that in my daily life to show that it's just, I don't just wear a collar, but I live among the people, as we all are, to serve the Lord.
Listening to you talk about, the struggles of everyday life, I know that I feel like sometimes when we're struggling with something, everyone feels they're unique. We don't stop to think that everybody's got struggles. You drive down a block and you see a row of houses and the doors are all closed, and you just assume that everything is hunky-dory in every household. And I am sure that if you open the door and walk through and observed, you would find that every single person has their struggles. Nobody's got this, struggle-free existence.
Well, your faith is countercultural these days, and it's a time of so violence and the pain and things that are going on. It's a time to realize that in an environment where we say separation of church and state, where everything should be separate, the real thing is this is the time when we should come together and understand the pain and suffering we have is collective, and the polarization that we see in society is not helping. And regardless of what your faith tradition is, to come together and to support one another and to build commonality will really help all.
And that sounds wonderful and something we should all aspire to, but how do we make it happen? How do you make it happen when, people struggle for their piece of the pie and they want to protect their piece of the pie? How do you get them to kind of let go of that and feel comfortable in coming together and being there for one another?
Well, one of the most enriching, rewarding experiences in life is helping others. And if we all just took a moment every day to reach out and help someone, you feel better about yourself. Mm-hmm. And the person you help or someone who witnesses that wants to do the same. And just simple, minor things that take place. If everyone takes that type of attitude, we won't have such the violence and hatred in the world we have today.
It really is a scary time in a lot of respects. But I think listening to you, there should be a sense of hope, out there. I think we can come together and do this, and doing something for someone. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about the fact that for the last couple of years, since I've been at the town, and I did it too when I was at the county, I've had some involvement over the years with the Suffolk County Salvation Army, and they have this Angel Tree program. So I brought it in to the government office, in Riverhead, and I brought it to Town Hall. And what it is everybody, if they choose to participate, gets a little angel, and it's got a child's name on it. And it'll say things like, Susie, pajamas size 10, and a bike, or, a game or a doll, but their little wish list. So people have signed up and they take them, and going shopping, with this little angel with a kid's name on it, you really feel connected and you really feel good about it. And last year at the town, we adopted almost 70 angels. And when those gifts were gathered, bicycles and the kinds of things you wouldn't expect that people would be willing to do for someone they don't really know, and that spirit of, wow, we made this happen, it is really beautiful. So it really attests to what you're saying.
It's a wonderful experience. I mean, if anyone who just helps out someone else and does some charity, it just will make the whole place feel so much better. And in our own community, I recall right after when Sandy hit and the devastation, and somebody called for a cleanup in one of our neighborhood parks. And I laughed and said, everyone's dealing with their own destruction. Their homes are just totally gone. And I drove down the street and saw all these people cleaning out the park. It was amazing. So there is goodness in the world.
Oh, there really, really is. And people, if you give them the opportunity, sometimes not everybody is a self-starter, and they're not, going to say, okay, come on, let's all get together and, have a show. But given the opportunity, they will step up. Just last night when I was going through my emails, the Town of Islip Youth Bureau, and Tim Marr does a great job for us there. We're having a coat drive. So new or gently used coats, any size, shape, whatever, we're collecting them, and they're going to be given to people that really need them. And, I know we're going to be overwhelmed with donations, but giving people that opportunity, as you said, there really is good in the world. Yeah. We just have to give people that opportunity to show that they believe in it and will do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you for my education, because I would fly out weekly here from MacArthur to Chicago at Midway through Southwest in order to get my degree in seminary. So,
well, I'm glad that happened, and that Chicago Midway flight is no longer
Let's
coming.
Bring it back.
But in the spring, Frontier will be flying, I believe, to O'Hare from this very airport nonstop. We referred to the airport a couple of times. We referred to a lot of things, and I thank you for bringing us to a point of goodness, in this world, and to ask everyone to please have that sense of hope and being there for one another. And you were there for me today when I asked if you'd come be on the show. So, Mark Herbst, I thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
You're making a difference. Thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Supervisor Spotlight.